You are live. 3, 2, 1.
Namaskara. We can now start the substantive part of today's program, which is to say the actual examination of what I have done, rather than speaking in flowery detail about why and how and the whereabouts of the process. So now we can start from the work itself. A few constructive details, as some statistical details rather, as to how many cantos, etc. There are 24 cantos in total, and the total number of verses in various meters is 2775. And this is a scale necessary to reduce the Homeric original of around almost 20,000 lines of hexameter. In though substantive reduction and substantial reduction, this scale will be necessary, especially since I've added some details in the first two cantos and last two cantos, and the meters employed are also varied. As far as I remember, I think around 20 distinct have been used. The main narrative meters are, of course, Anushtup Shloka, which is the most natural meter for the Sanskrit language, and frankly, one of the most wondrous meters ever designed. It's spectacular for multiple reasons. That's one. Upajati, Vamshasthavila, Viyogini, Drutavilambita, one other, Karambajati. These are the main narrative meters. I will show some of those today as part of the selection. And in parts of description and Sargantya, as I mentioned before, there has to be a change of meter at the end. Those also we have things like Champakamala, Shikharini, Mandakranta, Sragdhara, etc. I will just show some of those also when the situation provides them. We can start from the benedictory verse, which is in Shardura Vikridita. I will sing it as I have been previously instructed by our venerable cameraman. विक्षिप्तैः करणैः प्रनर्तनविधौ सन्तन्यमानाम् विक्षिप्तैः करणैः प्रनर्तनविधौ सन्तन्यमानां निजां मायां दर्शितनामरूपरचनां लोकत्रयोद्भासिनीम् दर्शं दर्शमशेषभूतनिवह व्यामोह चित्राकृतिं देवो हासपरोस्तु बोधघटको युष्माकम् आद्यो नटः युष्माकमाद्यो नटः. This verse is in praise of Shiva, who is the Adya Nata, the primordial dancer. The reason for choosing this one I will explain shortly, but the meaning of the verse is that Vikshiptaih Karanaihi Pranartana Vidhau Santanyamanam Nijam Mayam Darsham Darsham. When he dances, we should think of the bas relief sculpture in Badami, where he has 18 arms, and from them Padma Subramaniam has identified 49 unique Karanas, including his Mandala Sthanaka and the way his head is moving and all that. So Santanyamana Nijam Mayam, when he dances, from the Karanas which are thrown about and employed in his divine dance, his own Maya is woven through those postures and movements he employs for his Sandhya Tandava. And in such a situation, when his Maya is created, Santanyamana, being extended outwards, being created, Nijam Mayam, and what sort is this Maya? Darshita Nama Rupa Rachanam. Maya is primarily characterized by names and forms, Nama and Rupa. All that comes into our perception is names and forms, and that is what we refer to as Maya, that is to say Jagat. So the illusory dualistic world that is created by the dance of the Lord, he sees that himself and laughs at it. He laughs that it is so enjoyable. The reason thereof is not the point. The point is that fate creates things and then laughs at it, plays with it, and moves on. Because fundamentally it doesn't exist. This is the Indian philosophical twist that we can give to Homer's Arsha vision. And such a Lord, Devo Hasaparaha, Yushmakam Bodha Ghatakostu. Let that laughing Lord be the creator of wisdom for all of you. That's to say, for all of us also. But since the tradition of Mahakavya openings is to address the audience directly, it's in the second person as Yushmakam and not Asmakam. And there are a few verses also regarding the nature of the composition. One of those is also in Shartula Vikridita. I will read this and not sing it, since the content is more important in this case. नेपथ्यान्तरयुक्तमप्यनितरस्पर्ध्यप्रभावं यथा ज्ञात्वा संवदमानशोभमुचितारोपं प्रयोगान्तरे किञ्चित् कारितरूपभेदमचिराद्धत्ते नटी भूषणं काव्यं तद्वदिदं परा भगवती कर्णे क्रियात् भारती. It's a reference to the spirit in which this work has been undertaken. It's a reference to Bharati, Saraswati, with of course the slight pun being Bharati of Bharata, the Indian Saraswati, if we may take that bent. How is this work to be received? Now, when a dancer is there as part of a drama troupe, she is the heroine in all the productions. She has multiple scripts that are all being staged together at different parts, at different shows, different locations, and she has a limited set of ornaments for all her repertoire. So she takes up one ornament and recognizes its value in some other staged production and takes it to the contractor, has some minor changes made to it, and wears it as is on the next program of whatever she has envisioned. In a similar way, the Homeric epic, which was Saraswati's ornament when she put on the Greek show, that is made only slight changes with and just formatively changed to put on in the Sanskrit stage show also. And because she recognized it as Uchitaropa, it is worth putting on in Prayogantara, in a different stage production. In such a way, let Saraswati put this work upon her ear. That's the idea of it. And with these two introductory benedictory verses, we can jump to the fifth sarga. If time permits, I will come back to the first four sargas. There are some interesting points there. But I wanted to. This is the scene where the river goddess Thetis, who is Achilles' son, sorry. she is Achilles' mother. And her son calls to her to come out of the ocean to hear his cries because he is very, very sad that Agamemnon took away his girlfriend. And he complains to his mother that you go and recommend to the king of gods, Zeus, that until Agamemnon apologizes to me in as profuse a manner as he can, until such a point in time, let the Greeks not win this war at all. Let them keep getting beaten. Let them keep getting defeated and humiliated by the Trojans in the field, regardless whatever Agamemnon feels, cries, and thinks. Let good things not happen to the Greek forces until he apologizes to me. And Thetis tells him it's a really silly idea, but decides to do it for him anyway. And she goes to Olympus, the mountain of gods, to appeal to Zeus on his behalf. These verses are from there. द्यावा पृथिव्योर्व्यतिशङ्गसेतुं श्वेताम्बुदाच्छन्नतुषारहारम् अपाररथ्यश्रमहारिसानुं श्रीमन्तमाद्यं भुवनस्य नाभिं This is a description of Olympus, the mountain. Dyava Prithivyoho Vyatishanga Setuhu. It's a bridge to connect heaven and earth. Shvetambudachanna Tusharaharaha. His garlands of snow, Olympus, it appears in the Pullinga in Sanskrit. So his garlands of snow have been covered by the white clouds which are around his neck and shoulder area because he is so tall. Apara Rathyashrama Harisanum. Apara here is not abstract word. It is the name of the god Apollon, made to fit with his Greek name, the phonetic quality of it. So he travels in a chariot, much like Surya, across the firmament. And his chariot does not have one wheel, it has both wheels. They were not so imaginative as we are. Those wheels and their sparkling is what we recognize as the sun's disk, is what the Greeks believed. And when Apollon flies across the sky, his horses may get tired, and the slopes of Olympus are there for them to rest for a while and carry on. Shrimantam Adyam Bhuvanasya Nabhim, the ancient navel of the universe, such was Olympus, and Thetis went there. तन्मूर्ध्नि निहारवतंसभाजि न्यस्ताङ्घ्रिमीड्यं पितरं प्रजानां वह्निप्रतीकाशशरीररागं सुपर्वनाथं तटिनी ददर्श. Tatini means river, but since it sounds like Thetis, it has been used as her name. And upon the peak of Olympus, Tanmurdhni, Nihara Vatamsa Bhaji, decorated with ornaments of snow, there she saw Zeus. What was he doing? He was just standing there and watching things. The belief of the Greeks was that Father Zeus sits on top of the mountains, especially so that he can see everybody and what they are doing. His seat atop a mountain is not choice by personal pleasure, but because he wants to be a watchman to the entire cosmos and he needs the vantage point for it to be on. So he rests on the highest peak, which is Olympus. Nyastangrim, placing his feet there. Idyam Pitaram Prajanam, the hallowed father of all creatures. Vanhi Pratikasha Sharira Ragam, glowing like fire. There Thetis saw Suparvanatham, the Lord of Gods, standing there. And she, Vyaktasura Ayodhana Veera Lakshma, Nadim Apashyat Bhagavan Sureshaha, and he also saw her. And what sort was he? Vyakta Asurayodhana Veera Lakshma. He had fought with the Titans before becoming king of the gods. This is a uniqueness of Greek myth. Many people who have read Percy Jackson, etc., would know it. That Zeus carries on the Greek divine tradition of fighting with one's parents. The Titans rebelled against their father Uranus, Uranos, which actually means just sky in Greek, anyway. And the Kronos was the leader of the Titans, and he had 6 children, the 6th of which was Zeus. And there was a prophecy that Kronos' son would dethrone him. Much like Kamsa, Kronos was frightened, so he ate all his children and swallowed them until the 6th one was born to his wife and sister Rhea. And she decided she would not see another child swallowed like this, so she gave the baby to her mother, Gaia, the earth goddess. And she said, keep him safe, when the time comes I will bring him back. So she wrapped a similar sized stone in baby's clothes and gave it to her husband. And he said, oh, yo, very nice, and he swallowed the rock. And he thought that was that. And the boy grew up under the watchful guidance of Gaia, drinking Amrita and all that. And he grew into a strapping young fellow. And he came to Olympus one day, dressed as a cupbearer for his father, and said, sir, I need work. And he was inducted into the Titan's service. And there he mixed one laxative and throw up drug into his wine. And when Kronos drank it, Zeus's 5 siblings were spat out. And they included Zeus, Zeus, Poseidon, Demeter, Hestia, and Hyades. All of these were there. And they were thrown up by Kronos. And with these 5 siblings, Zeus waged war on his father and his uncles and aunts, and many titans picked the young gods' side, including Prometheus, which is why he was not cast into Tartarus later on, and he was given the task of modeling human beings and all those things. But many titans took the other side, such as Atlas. So they were punished. His job is to continuously bear up the sky and keep struggling. That's his whole job. That's his punishment. And the Cyclopes, the one-eyed Rakshasas, they became helpful to Zeus in that instance. So they crafted thunderbolts for him, the Vajra. And with those he conquered the Titans. So because of that, the Cyclopes were not wholesale cast into Tartarus. Some of them were spared, and they populated the islands which would later become Polyphemus' island. And Odysseus would have a rather unsavory time there. So this is the history of Zeus's ascent to power. That is what is referenced here in Vyakta Asura Yodhana Veera Lakshma. Veera Lakshma is the scars of war, the decorations of a warrior. So those were clear upon his body, and he looked upon the river goddess. And in the process of looking at her, he moved his eyeballs, and that was enough to shake the mountain a little bit. This is from the Greek original also, and it reflects the idea of the Greeks that gods are essentially embodiments of pure power, with scruples having a tertiary, almost fourth level seat in the conception of divinity. And from here we can jump to the 8th sarga. In the betwixt of these two sargas, the 5th and 8th, we have a series of rather important events where Menelaus and Paris duel each other. In fact, it seems quite insane that the idea that these two would duel would only show up in the 10th year of the war. It's quite silly, really. And before the duel, Priam, the old king, gets Helen to tell him which Greek hero is who, which is also something rather silly to do if you have been fighting these very same people for 10 years now. Which is why some believe quite strongly that what Homer describes is actually the start of the war, and this 10 years thing is just a ancillary detail to show how long these poor lads have been struggling. But anyway, Menelaus and Paris have a ritual duel to settle this dispute among themselves, and Paris, being essentially a pretty boy with no real martial skills, he gets owned pretty quick by Menelaus, and he is about to get choked by his own helmet strap. But Aphrodite is very fond of him because he had given the verdict that she is the prettiest among all the goddesses. So she comes in invisible form and cuts the helmet strap so that he stops choking, and she carries him off to his bedroom and then creates this whole scene where she brings Helen to him and lets him have fun, etc. And basically, she takes him away from his responsibilities. And when Paris disappears randomly like this, Menelaus starts asking where is he and demands the Trojans produce him or accept defeat. And Hector, being a soft, seeda, straightforward guy, he's about to be like, yeah, correct only. My brother has run away. You have won. And when he's about to stop things like that, fate intervenes morbidly. And an archer named Pandaros, who is on the side of Paris because he has been bribed by the guy many times beforehand, he shoots Menelaus with an arrow. And this is not allowed under the rules of ritual combat, ritual duels in Greece. So the others are not supposed to intervene. Even until someone dies or yields, you're not supposed to do anything. And neither of that has happened. So the rules are still standing. But Pandaros shoots Menelaus anyway. This irks the Greeks. So they launch it into a full onslaught, and from there's no going back. The war starts properly. And the first day of the war that Homer describes is what we see in the 8th Sarga. And just some verses from there.
So till the 8th Sarga, the war has not even begun?
Has not begun. About 700 verses of no war are present. Because there's a lot of fighting and arguing and insulting which has to happen in the first 3-4 sargas. You know?
Pandora's box.
That's Pandora's box. This guy is Pandaros, is his whole name. That she was a girl created by the gods, like this one. What's her name? Puloma was created by the gods as a perfection of beauty. Like that, Pandora was created by the Greek gods, and she was given to Epimetheus as a wife. And the idea was that Epimetheus is stupid and his wife will be stupider. And she opened the box, which she was specifically not supposed to open, and that's where sadness and greed, etc., came out for humans and started afflicting them. And just before she closed the box, hope was inside the box, and that is symbolic of how that just keeps remaining inside the heart of humans, which the Upanishad recognizes as the living embodiment of Ananda, the belief that I will be happy tomorrow. That is hope. That remains in spite of all the travails of the world. And that's the myth. That's unrelated for this. Anyway, and when the battle starts, this is in the Rathodhata meter. Tatra tatra vibhide cha khetakam varma cha pravividhe shitai sharaihi susruve rudhira mushna pichalam shula palira bhajat saragatam. This meter is best read rather than sung because it has a rhythmic cadence to it. It reflects the speed and this thing unengineerability of war because it fills the time and has this galloping rhythm to it. And it means that tatra tatra bibhide khetakam, shield is khetaka, was split here and there. When the two armies collide like this, shields are split. Varmacha pravividhe shitaisharaihi. These are passive perfect verbs. Pravividhe, bibhide, susruve, etc. Shitaisharaihi. Sharp arrows rent armors here and there, and hot blood was spilt everywhere, and the rows of spears became red at the tip because they were sunk into enemy bodies. And like this, a very horror filled battle continues, and the Greek hero who rises to lend aid to the Greeks is Diomedes, and he is the king of Aetolia. Of course, Achilles is not present in this battle, that is why they are in bad shape. So Diomedes comes up to Agamemnon and tells him, stop insulting people because they're running away. It's all because of you only this has happened. But still, I'll show you what Diomedes can do, son of Tydides, king of Aetolia. I will go and show you what I can do. And he goes there, and because of his courage, the goddess Athene comes to him and grants him divine sight for that one day. What that helps him do is notice where there are gods helping the Trojans, because all of them will be coming and doing match fixing in invisible form. Poseidon is on the Greeks' side, but Apollon, Ares, Aphrodite, they are all on the Trojans' side. So they will be guiding thrown spears to where it has to go, and people who are fainting will be waking up suspiciously early because of the gods. All of this will be happening on the Trojan side, and the Greeks will be having the brunt of it. So Diomedes is granted the sight to see where the gods are, and he has his day in the sun that day. And as part of that, he kills the first aggressor, that is to say Pandaros. He charges him down in his chariot and spears him through the gut. When he dies, the Greek tradition.
Pandaros is from the
Trojan side. He is an archer on the Trojan side, and quite a coward, as we find out later, because he hides behind a fig tree to shoot arrows at people.
Another archer is also quite cowardly.
In Paris.
At the end.
Paris. That doesn't appear in Iliad though. The slaying of Achilles doesn't show up. Anyway, in among the Greeks, it's also worth mentioning that combat with the spear and shield was considered more prestigious, and those who shoot arrows from long distances are cowards. It is different in our understanding, because the chariot was for us a moving archery platform. The way chariots are used in Greece is really quite silly, because they're used as taxi cabs to come to the battlefield, put on parking lot and come and fight with spear and shield. Yeah. And so Diomedes runs him down, gets off the chariot and then spears him. It's like that. And Pandaros was shooting arrows and he dies. And the Greek conception is that when an enemy is slain, his possessions, armor, weapons, etc., are free game for the killer. They are his spoils. So he takes them and they are his property. And the more you can show such trophies, the greater warrior you are. Even in Greek pottery painting, where there are pictures of soldiers arming for battle, you always see certain differently shaped helmets and swords hanging on the wall. They don't touch them because they're trophies of previous battles. So this was a cultural artifact of the Greek psyche. So Diomedes tries to do that because Athene tells him that Pandaros is a coward, but his armor is made of gold and electrum. You go there, it's worth 10 oxen. So you take that armor, it is worth having. So he goes and tries to cut the armor off the corpse. But there's another Trojan warrior by the name of Aeneas, who becomes the hero of Virgil's epic later on. And he is the son of Aphrodite, the goddess, who had a short-lived affair with the Trojan prince Anchises. And from that union was born this very pretty-looking hero, Aeneas, who later becomes a source of love-lorn death for Dido also in the Latin epic. So he challenges him that while I am still alive, you cannot do this thing of taking Pandaros's armor. I have no love to spare for the fellow, but you cannot take his stuff while I am here. So he speaks to him in the 78th verse. Beautiful Aeneas. He comes to him and says, Na tridhama kulasindhu chandramaha paryate vasuhritir mayi sthite ehitavad abhiyukshmamam rane kevalam bhujavatam yasho vasu. He says, Tridhama kulasindhu chandramaha. This is his address to Diomedes. Tridhama is his father, Taididis, and Dyutimedha is this guy, Diomedes, and he says, "You, who are you? You are the moon to the ocean that is the house of Tridhama. You are such a benefactor of your house, such is your glory, but na mayi sthite vasuhritif paryate kartum. While I am standing, you cannot go about looting like this. Ehi mutavat abhyungshva maam rane. Come and face me in battle. Why? Because kevalam bhujavatam yasho vasu. The only wealth worth looting for heroes is glory. You leave behind this armor and come fight me." And then in the 80th verse, Diomedes responds to him and says, "Yad yuyutsurasi purayami tat kincha varmanina rodhumarhasi yena bahubala nirjitam dhanam kalpatehi jayinah pravruddhaye." If you are so intent on fighting me, I will grant you that wish. But do not stop me when it comes to taking Pandaros's armor, because bahubala nirjitam dhanam, the wealth that is won by strength of arms, is for the victor's greatness. Jayinah pravruddhaye. And he goes on to mess up Aeneas pretty badly because he has Athene on his side. So he smashes his shield into his thigh bone and breaks it at the joint. And Aeneas has fallen. He cannot walk anymore. So he is drawing his sword to make a last stand from the ground. Diomedes kicks it aside and is about to plant his spear in his chest. And this Aphrodite shows up as last minute Deus Ex Machina again. And she picks up her son and starts running. And what she does not realize is that Diomedes can see her. She is under the impression that like any other mortal, he cannot see her. But because of Athene's anugraha, he can see her. So he chases her down like a wolf. And he has the sole distinction among the Greek heroes of having landed a wound on a god. So he throws his spear at Aphrodite and slices her on her wrist. And this becomes a point of teasing for the gods later on. Like, oh, you were wounded by mortal. Oh. It becomes quite hilarious later on, but those are Diomedes' exploits as of that day. And the canto ends with the following verse, which is in Vasanta Tilaka meter. Itham mahatumula nishkramitasu shudrak ase divatsu shatashah pralayam bhateshu tachonitankita iva swayamabja bandhu pratyanchamancha dabhirakta mukho digantam. This was rendered in the Suprabhata format for the familiarity of people. Itham, in this manner, mahatumula nishkramitasu shatashah bhateshu pralayam ase divatsu. When the great battle went on like this, hundreds of soldiers were slain, and nishkramitashu, their lives were driven out from their bodies, and they went to the house of Hades, the lord of the underworld, and as though their blood had jumped into the sky to make him red, the sun became ruddy and also sank into the western horizon. And this marks the end of the first day of recorded battle in Homer. And now we can shift gears again to the next
Homer
day.
also described these, like an upama in Kalidasa, like the blood has.
This is Utpreksha.
Utpreksha. So
Tachonitankita iva, as though he were decorated or stuck with their blood. It's not a comparison because there is no other object. It's an exaggeration. Utpreksha.
So such is also there in Homer's works?
Yes, but not much. Very less. He is famed for a certain poetic device called Homeric simile. I'll give an example of that here also later. But it is essentially a very long and very vivid comparative event. His similes don't operate at object to object level, but event to event level. So he describes an event very long and very vividly and reuses the same thing hundreds of times. So it gets boring really fast. But when first time when it comes, oh, very nice. Because as when the first snows of winter are powered down by Father Zeus's deadly anger, and they render the ocean's surface splattered with blotches of white, so were the sprays of blood to be found from the neck of someone when he died, like that. So event to event comparators are there. And as when a lion pounces on a herd of sheep when the herdsman is away and launches himself upon their bleating flocks and beats them down five at a time before the huntsman returns with five of his brothers to throw missiles at him, and the great beast is rendered weak and he returns to the forest, so was mighty Odysseus forced to return to the Greek ranks when Hector's brothers came at him, etc., etc., like this.
That's
The
very nice.
ingenuity of the Indian and Sanskrit poets is in the most minute filigree work also they can do, mega scale work also they can do. That sort of dual capability we do not find in Homer. Poetic quality is there in the man, but it's understated by far compared to his vision. And now we can go to the 10th Sarga for one of the few really heartfelt family moments of the epic, where Hector takes his final leave of his wife and 3-year-old son, who is later killed, and his wife is enslaved later on in the epic tradition. Quintus Mirnaeus records it, and this is the scene where he last meets them, his wife and son, because he never enters the city after that. The next 3 or 4 days, the battle goes on, and Patroclus dies, and the next day, Achilles comes to find him, and Hector never manages to enter the city walls, and he is killed in front of them. So, this is the last time he meets his wife and child. Let us see what happens. Let me scroll. 73. So his wife Andromache finds him standing on top of the ramparts one evening. That day there would have been a peace called for the war, because the Greek elder Nestor, he was aged 80 but still comes to the war to act as a strategist and a general counselor and make a few kills here and there. He sends a message to Priam, saying, who is the Trojan king, saying that all these warriors on both sides are young bloods. I and you are aged, and we know the trials of life. If so many people have already died on the first day, let us do one samskara for them, because these young fellows, they won't know what to do and when to do them. So it is my and your responsibility to make sure these things happen in the proper way. So let's call a truce. You guys cremate your people, we will cremate our people, and after that we will come aram se naha dhoke, we will fight tomorrow. So the peace is called, and two great pyres are raised on both sides, and hundreds of people are cremated together. Hundreds of trees are chopped, and they're all made into enormous pyres, and they're all lit up at the same time, and earth is piled on top of them as per Greek tradition, and the fires are made to come down with wine, watered wine, because it is more sacred than pure water. And they put earth on top of it, and those two funerary mounds are later on useful for both sides of warriors to mark which side is which. Because when the night gets a little, evening gets a little dark, if you have to go back, you find where you're going. Oh, our mound is there, let's go, like that. So at the end of that day, in the evening, Hector is standing on top of the rampart, thinking about how to manage the battle tomorrow, and his wife comes to him at that point, Andromache, and essentially her understandable anxiety is that I have been seeing bad omens. You don't go to fight. Our walls are strong. Nobody can breach them because the gods built them. Apollon and Poseidon had built them for Hector's grandfather Laomedon. And in fact, Laomedon was a cheat, so he didn't give them their payment. So they got angry and broke some part of the wall also that they had built. And then he gave them some few bulls to sate them, and they rebuilt it back together. Such strong walls are there. Let's just stay behind them and fight this as a siege. You do not have to do these things. If needed, let's just give Helen back to them. I've been seeing bad omens, you don't go. This is in the Vamshasthavila meter. So she says, Name pita no janani na sodara dharanti nita yavanair yamakshayam tathapi duye nahi veera pashyamam tvayi sthite trayana kirti shevadhau. Namaskara. So she says that her father, Aetion is his name, he was from a different province. She had been married to the prince as a matter of political legitimacy for her father's house also. We are intimated of this later on. But those provinces had been conquered by the Greeks beforehand. So her father was dead, and her mother was dead, and her brothers were dead. All of them were dead. Nita Yavanair Yamakshayam. The Greeks have taken them to the house of Hades. But even then, I do not feel sorrow or afraid because you are there. You are the treasure trove of Trojan glory. So if you die, Tvameva nah kshemakrit eka samshrayaha. You are our single refuge. Vina bhavantam vadakena jivita janas samastoyam adhuta shatravaha. If you should die in battle, with our enemies still around, how are the rest of us supposed to survive? So you don't go to battle. She entreats him very profusely, but he refuses to do what she says. And we see that here. He says that I know in my heart of hearts that we are going to lose this war because it is Paris's great misadventure and lack of scruples that have led us to this place. So it is only right that the crime is answered for properly. So in the process of that, the Greeks will end up winning. And I do not want to live to see the day where you will be carted off as a slave woman and my son may be killed. So before that, it is better that I die. That is his whole point. And so he says, Janas samasto bhavatim tatha vidham nirikshya nusmera mukho mithaf pathi amihi dara paramatma janmanaha dvisham varasyeti katham karishyati. When they will take you off to foreign lands to work in somebody's house, to carry water or some other menial job, people will see you walking in the streets and they will laugh amongst themselves and say, oh, is this not the wife of Hector, our foremost rival? I do not want to be alive to hear those things. Tadutsahe sadhvi kadapi nekshitum tvadiya dasyam swayam akshato dharan. Surviving myself without a wound, I do not intend to see your enslavement in such a fashion. Tatas savarma praharannaham rane yasho dugham viragatim varam gataha. So it is better that I die on the field of battle and glory will come to me than I live to see such things. And with that, he refuses his wife's plea. And then his son would be sleeping in his mother's arms. And his small baby, 3 years old, he wakes up for a little while to say goodbye to his father. And as a part of that, because his father is in full armor, he's wearing the plumed helmet and that scares the child. So he cries a little bit and both parents smile at him. And this is the most tender moment of the Iliad, because after that they never meet each other again. This is that verse, 96th one. Sa manda nidralasa cheshtita shishuhu shirastra pichhati karala darshanam nirikshya bhitah pitaram rudam stada kshanaya mata pitara vahasayat. The child manda nidralasa cheshtitaha, small low sleep, just Mamparu, as we say in Kannada. He woke up from that and he saw his father who was wearing the plumed helmet, horsehair plume. This is a constant epithet in Homer, Hector of the nodding plume. There is some Greek word also for it which I am forgetting now. It's constantly used word because it sits well in hexameter. So he looks at that face of his father and is so frightened that he cries for a while. Rudam stada. And both his parents laugh at him and have a warm family moment. And after that, Hector goes off to arm his soldiers for the next day's conflict, and Andromache goes back home. And he pronounces a benediction for his son and tells his wife, Achuchudat samprati devi ma shuchaha nakopyakale mava jeevitam haret. I will not die before my time is here, so you must not cry about me. You must go home and make sure that the city is strong and public morale is high. Make sure that people do not despair. And saying that, he goes away to the armory, and the end of the canto is in the Ruchira meter. Yashassitair bhuvamupala layankaraihi chiradagat kumudapatir drisham pathaha tadatyaye bhatajana bhagya chanchalair nabho babha udukiranair hikevalam. The moon also set in the western horizon. How did he set? Yashassitaihi kiranaihi bhuvam upalalayan. The Sanskrit traditional convention is that glory is white in color. So with rays as white as fame and glory, because it's a war, so the aptness is there, the moon embraced the earth with his last white rays and set in the western horizon. And after he set, The rest of the night was made bright only by the glimmer of stars, which are as ಏನಪ್ಪಾ, whose light is as intermittent as the lives and fates of fighting men. And with this, the 10th canto is over, and now we jump to a rather interesting cultural detail and very heartful segment of the Iliad, which is where the Greek hero Aias, son of Telamon, and Hector fight each other one on one. Because Hector leads a very, very successful onslaught on the Greeks and beats back their forces till the wall they had built to protect themselves. Because Agamemnon shows some foresight for the first and maybe last time in his life, and when the truce is called to build the funerary mounds and cremate people, he also tells the Greeks, let's build a protective wall against our camp so that our ships don't get burnt and we don't get stranded in this foreign place. So he beats the Greeks' armies back until their walls, and he's about to enter the camp also when Aias Telamonides, son of Telamon, makes a heroic stand and says, let both armies be just as is. Hector, come and fight me. Whosoever loses, their side will accept defeat. So Hector answers him in kind, and they begin to fight a very successful and tight-knit duel. And at the end of them, neither approaches any sort of conclusion, because both are equally matched. And at such a point, they become good friends with each other because they have fought against each other for such a long time, and they commend each other, give each other gifts, and tell each other that we will meet here like this tomorrow, and they go back to their camps. It's a very nice segment. Let us see that. Tam sahasam anayasah, this is back to shloka. Tam sahasam anayasah hatakshatram abhashata. Anayasa Ayas then spoke to Hector. Adyame phalato bahu prahritya tvayi manada udbhutis tailamanasya vamshasyayam pravirahan yanmayadya jita kirtihi sakha chasadito bhavan. He says, today my arms are worth something, they are worth having, because I have warred against you who has brought me glory, and this is the great fame and virtue of the house of my father Telamon, that not only have I earned glory and points of virtue by fighting against you, I have also encountered a friend like you. Sakha chasadito bhavan. Grihana tasmat charmedam mama sakhyustavanagha yatvaya kunta patuna kinchin nunnamukham kritam. So take this great shield of mine. The shield of Aias is enormous. It's made of 7 layers of ox hide and then rimmed with bronze. And the boss is made of gold. So, and Hector would have thrown his spear at it, and a dent would have formed in all 7 layers because of the force of Hector's throw. So he says, take this shield of mine because I am your friend, I am giving it to you, but don't mind it too much because there's a dent in it that you have put. And then Pritiman Parameyopi Charmadaya Sudarshanam Sakosha Mekhalam Khadgam Dvisheswam Pratyapadayat. So happily Hector accepted the shield and took off his sword and belt and wrapped it around and gave it to Aias. Vinimiyeti taush shastram bahumana purassaram prakoshthagraha manyonyam grihitva ghrishtakankanau abhashyaste punashastrairayam shvo jana ahave ityudirya mahabahu nyavartetam nije bale. So having exchanged their gifts like this, they embraced each other, held each other's arms like this, and said, tomorrow you must talk to me again with your weapons. And taking leave of each other, they went back to their respective sides. So one of the most important moments of warrior ethos in the Iliad, where the common strategy sutra seems to be kill before the other guy gets you. In spite of that, these two show a level of sportsmanship spirit in a very high stakes situation, and the old man Nestor comes as a umpire sort of fellow near the evening and says, we have both seen the excellence of Greek and Trojan arms, let us all commend them, clap clap huzzah moment. And it's all very neatly described. In fact, it is also the opinion of C.M. Boura, who was a Cambridge professor of Greek studies in the 1930s, that if this one segment was not included in the Trojan War story, the impact of these warriors' deaths would have been much less to the reader, because this makes them human. If they were just killing each other left and right, we would have done some March Madness football points gathering rather than seeing them as true humans who are dying. So, this is the importance of that scene. And now we go to the 15th canto. ಇದು ಬೇಕಾ ಇದ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ 45. So this is a very rare instance of humor in the Iliad, where the Greek and Trojan armies are meeting for battle after a night raid by Odysseus and Diomedes to kill a bunch of Trojans in the dead of night. And the armies meet the next day, and Hector is all set to wipe the Greeks from the planet. And that's when the queen of gods, Hera, decides to take their side. And she realizes that her husband Zeus, as per Thetis and Achilles' request, is helping the Trojans. So she has to create a distraction for him. So she decides, hum banenge distraction. So she calls upon the goddess of love and beauty, Aphrodite, the same one who got a cut on her wrist, to give her her magic girdle that has the power to make people fall in love with you. That is her entire capital of her entire dhanda. So she gets that girdle from her and uses it to seduce her husband and make him distracted from what he is doing by puppetry show on battlefield. So at least for a few hours he should be on side. And in the meantime, her brother-in-law and brother, Poseidon, he comes up from the ocean to take the Greeks' side and lets them give the Trojans a tough fight. And in that situation, Aphrodite and Hera have a tussle of words with each other. And Aphrodite is quite, she's a salty sort of person. So she shows up to Olympus from the peak, and because Hera summoned her, and she says, Jayatu Devavarasya Manahpriya, this is Drutavilambita, the meter. किमयमद्य जनोनु दिदृक्षितः कथमहो जगती परिपालनान् मयि विचाल्य मतिर्गविता त्वया. Oh, glory to the wife of Zeus. How is it that you have remembered all such insignificant people as us? She is a great goddess who was born from the ocean, but sarcasm is important. How is it that you have remembered us? Kathamaho jagati paripalanat mayi matir vichalya gavita. How is it that you have so many important roles in taking care of the world? You have taken away your attention from those things and given it to me. How great of an anugraha you are doing. Apinaka pyavamatya tava krudham priyatama padamadya sureshituhu adhirurukshati manusha kitika. Surely there is no horrible human woman midget that she is, who seeks to supplant you and becomes Zeus's new favorite lover. This cannot surely not happen, because when such things happen, it's Aphrodite who makes them happen. It's a subtle reminder that I can make your life hell. Vidhi virodha chanohi manorathaha, because as I'm sure you know, the very nature of love and desires is to transgress the rules that are proper. So surely these things are not happening. If they were happening, she would have been the one doing them. So it's a veiled threat. These humorous instances are also there. Now we can quickly jump to the 20th Sarga and behold the death of Hector. Okay. After he fights the river god Scamander, so Hector makes the bold decision of taking a last stand outside the walls of the city, and Achilles doesn't even show up with an army. He shows up single-handed, hunting Hector like a wolf, and he comes to the gates of Troy, and Hector is there, and Hector is so called because he is firm in battle. The name has much the same connotation as the word Yudhishthira, although he is a much greater warrior than Dharmaraja ever was. And Hector is standing there with the full intention of fighting Achilles in a duel. But he sees Achilles running towards him, and even Hector gets frightened. And he runs around the walls of the city with Achilles chasing him, and they circle the city 3 times like this, chasing with Achilles chasing Hector. and that is the essence of this verse. त्रिर्दूरेवध संचितं पुरवधू कांची गुणं भास्वर स्वर्णांतर्गत रत्न संकुल गलद्रोचिर विचित्राकृतिं सालं त्रायण यावनौ नरवरौ पर्यक्रमेतां तदा हन्यामित्यपरः धरेयमिति चाप्यन्यः अनिवार्य स्पृहौ. Three times the two flawless men, Hector and Achilles, the Greek and the Trojan, they circled the wall built by Apollon for Laomedon. What was it? Puravadhu Kanchi Gunam. If the city was a goddess, these walls are her mekhala, the girdle, the waist, what is it? Waistband, Vadyana. Bhasvara Swarnantargata Ratna Sankula Galadrochir Vichitrakratim. At its peak there was filaments of gold, and inside those the gods had set gems, so that everywhere you look upon the walls there are all sorts of light glimmering down at you. And such a wall they ran around 3 times, where one of them was wishing to kill and the other was wishing to live, and neither of their desires could be ruled out and at front. And then Hector makes a stand when the gods prompt it of him, and he asks him a very basic question, that I will fight with you, and who is skilled and who is the killer in a battle is not up to humans. The gods will it, and so it happens. So I will ask you one thing: if I will kill you, I will make sure you get the honors due to a dead warrior. Can you promise me the same? That's all I ask of you. And then Achilles says, Vidambayan kharam shulam tatinyas tanayo drisha pratyaha krodha samrambha kampamanasvano ripum hatositvam hataksatra ma shamsi samayaniha nasayanti naras simhaihi napi mesha vrikaisaha nakhair vidaryate gatram kutsitam prutukirtihan bhuyah kravyam samudhritya bhaksheyam jivatastava tavan me paramah krodhaha jalpitena kritam shula mudyaccha rudhiram te dyapasyati rauravaha. He stares at Hector with a sharpness beyond the spear that he is holding and tells him, Hector, do not talk to me of agreements and pacts. There are no pacts between men and lions, and sheep and wolves make no pacts with each other. I have such an immense anger in my heart that I may pounce on you as you live and tear your heart out with my fingernails and eat your flesh as you are surviving. Such is my rage. So you do not talk to me of these things. Today Ares will have his fill of your blood because I will kill you. And so saying, he advances on Hector, and they have a very short duel because Hector is no real match for Achilles when he is angry. And Achilles drives his spear into this region where the shoulder blades and the collarbone meet. He puts his spear here, and Hector dies in short course. And in the next 4 cantos there are descriptions of the funeral games, and since there is metrical variety over there, I will read 2 of those verses. The meaning is less important. The innovativeness of the meter is what counts. And so it was the Greek tradition when a hero dies to hold funerary games in his honor. This is in fact one thing that is missing, frankly, in Indian literature, is games. Fun and games are not depicted with as much glory as they have in the Greek tradition, because even in Mahabharata, when we have dice, it ends up in such catastrophe, and in Ramayana there isn't much room for playing around because someone is getting exiled or someone is too busy being a good person to have fun. So the Greeks have always been fond of physical sports. So that's another thing. Even when games are described in the Indian tradition, they're board games or intellectual games. The sort of physical running race, javelin throw type contests are not found. But the Greeks took a lot of fun in these things, and even in the frieze sculptures outside the Parthenon, we see depictions of such games where there are discus throwers and runners and wrestlers, and it's the same spirit which later became the festival in the name of the Zeus Olympios in the city of Olympia, where all Greeks would come there, and enmities between city-states were forgotten for that period, like a yajna, and they would have contests there with pancration and javelin throw, running, discus, and later on chariot race was added. So these were the 5 sports of such a situation. We have the chariot race where 3 people contest in it. Antilochus, son of Nestor, and Menelaus participates, I think, and Meriones, who is another subsidiary king of Agamemnon. And when they start their chariots, the description in the Greek original is also very nice, very detailed rather. What was the length of the track, where were the turning posts laid, who were the sentries at the turning post to make sure people were not cheating, what was the regulation pattern of the horses, what was the mandated length of the reins. All of these are provided in accurate detail, and you have to go around the track 12 times, and that's the end of the race. And they're at the starting point.
That's what we see in Ben-Hur.
That's what we see in Ben-Hur also. And the call is given, the chariots start now. The checkered flag is dropped, and not really, of course. And the chariots start, and the meter here employed is Ashwadhati. The entire point is that it sounds like galloping horses. So I would request that the cadence is given special attention here. आवर्जित प्रवयण आस्फालितं व्यवहिताशेष संयमगुणं प्रोद्वेल्लदग्रपद संघृष्ट वारिधर मुद्दण्ड केसरचयम् आकृष्यमाणरथमाहन्यमानधरमाधीयमानरभसं कं विस्मितन्न भुवि गन्धर्व वृन्दमकरोत्तत्स्वभावलटभम्. This is Ashwadhati. It's quite simple idea. The whips were dropped and the horses leaped forward, and their 2 front legs were raised high enough to scrape the clouds, and they pulled the chariots behind them as they beat down the earth with their hooves, and all the spectators' minds were drawn by the running horses and their jumping manes. These types of metrical variations are also given, and the story continues over the 23rd and 24th cantos with events which are not given in the Homeric original, which include the rainy season, which comes in Greece in the winter, much like in Bay Area, and the rainy season's description is given, and the siege of the city is broken by the Greeks by the introduction of the Trojan horse, which is created as a ruse of Odysseus. And the warriors, we know the story, of course, they enter the Trojan city in the belly of the horse, and they exit at night and throw open the gates so that the rest of the Greeks can enter, and mass murder of the Trojan royal family is created. There's a lot of what will be today called Nazi level war crimes are committed on the Trojans. The city is burnt out of pure spite, and a lot of women and children are enslaved, and the 3-year-old son of 3-year-old son of Hector is killed by Odysseus because he will turn into a Hector tomorrow, so it is better we kill him now. He kills him in Kamsa style by slapping him against the stone wall. And then the ships set off back to Greece, and the gods, Athene and her father Zeus, have a conversation about whether this was worth doing or not, whether the destruction of the city is what the gods had in mind. And Zeus says in as many words that the essential plot points of events is what the gods can decide, but the small details of how they happen is really up to people, because Daiva and Purushakara, fate and human action, are like sails and oars in a ship. Once a ship has gone forward by a certain amount, you cannot in retrospect put down in figures what percentage of this motion was given by the sail and what percentage was given by the oars. In some, what we call in Kannada, dappandaju, in some rough estimation, they both work in tandem and they create eventual results. Such is a thing that has happened here. But the Greeks have done major transgressions, and the fruits thereof will have to be visited upon them, and those punishments are detailed in the Odyssey later on. Lesser Aias, Oilean Aias is drowned. Greater Aias commits suicide, and a lot of people are stranded on various islands. Menelaus is exiled to Egypt by fate for 10 years and he comes back. Odysseus stays out of home for 20 years without his will. Agamemnon goes home and is slain by his wife and her lover. And his son remains outside the city for many years, comes back, takes revenge on his mother and her lover for his father's murder, and then he proceeds to die later on. So the grand tragedy that tragedies bring about is described in further detail there, and there the epic comes to a close. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation of some choice verses. The selection was last minute. I do believe there are some better points that could have been showcased, but in the time that we had, I hope this has been enjoyable and informative also. Thank you.
Question answers can go along with the food.
The speaker will